Hello, Internet. Happy Tuesday, June 2nd. Today's virtual tea party is going to be mostly about green tea and the important step for green tea to quality tea processing. Last week on Tuesday, I shared about withering, harvest, and withering of tea, and how that is actually the most important step in quality tea processing. But today I'm going to talk about a step that is unique and important to especially green tea, but also to oolong tea as well. And that step is called kilgreen. There is no killing itself going on other than the denaturing or killing of sorts of an enzyme. So it's kind of a funny name, but we'll get into it. Before I get into the tea education portion of today's broadcast, I'm going to do a little industry update. Hi, Sin City Sweet Tooth. I like that name. You guys have any sweet matcha? I love cooking with matcha. Okay, so industry update. I haven't provided an industry update in a little while, and really outside of India's lockdown being extended for another month, there really is not much of an update. Still a lot of chatter going on within the industry about increased e-commerce opportunities. So people are definitely purchasing more tea online these days, which is great. A lot of companies are citing significant increase in online tea sales, but I think something to keep in mind when you're hearing about these big growth numbers of e-commerce is that prior to pandemic, online tea sales, even for large established tea brands, were very limited compared to other distribution channels that they had, specifically around food service distribution. So, usually, how it works for a tea business, be it specialty tea or even commodity tea in the US, uh, I can definitely talk for the US. I'd imagine it's very similar in Europe as well, that the business model is split up something like this: 60% towards wholesale, which is mostly to restaurants. Another, 30% going towards in-shop sales, retail, and then the rest of it on online sales. So um, that kind of gives you a reference of how powerful online sales were before. Not devaluing websites. Websites have always been very important to websites to manage catalog and to manage your, placement in the hemisphere of tea brands. It's very important to have a beautiful website that tells your story and catalogs your products so that people can see them. And someone may actually browse through your products. It's very common, but the actual sale, and this is all pre-pandemic, the actual sale most likely was going to happen in the restaurants or in the tea shop. Not to say that online sales didn't do well, especially, a lot of people complain. I shouldn't say complain, but they cite that there are no local tea retailers for them to access, especially if they're living in a very isolated, smaller town that doesn't have boutique retailers that would make specialty tea available. So there are some folks that even before had exclusively bought their tea online. But even that, and even a connoisseur that wants to explore and research and is constantly finding new sources, there wasn't a bunch of brand loyalties. So, if you had done the work or paid for the traffic to convert a sale on your website, it's not like other products where there's a lot of brand loyalty and you can be assured that that investment to acquire that sale, to acquire that customer, would have long-term sustainability as far as the customer coming back and buying over and over again. With specialty tea, we found that especially connoisseurs were very interested in trying different brands versus having allegiance to one or another. There are a few brands that have done a great job through their video content and also through their social media content in creating a community of exclusivity and of apex. Oh, I found this brand, so that's good. And I won't name any names, but you can probably think of a few in your own head that have succeeded in building brand loyalty and good returning business on their websites. But a lot of these articles that I'm seeing currently that are talking about the increase of online sales since pandemic has started really is due to people not being able to go to the store, that tea shop being closed. And so, a lot of these tea shops do have very avid offline communities. And maybe they were connected the entire time through an email list or through a website or social media. And so then when they promoted their online shop, conversions of sales were significantly higher. So some articles I'm seeing are saying that there's been like a 40% increase. The data that I think is probably more serious is from Camellia Research. He had surveyed a long list of specialty tea retailers, and the number he came up with of increased sales was 7%, which 7% is not that much of an increase, especially when your principal number, your starting number, was very low. Even for a large company, it wasn't a surprise to find out that they didn't do more than $300 a month in online sales. So now you add 7% to that, and that's where you're at. But hi, Michelle, how are you? That's so funny, Michelle. I was gonna look you up. I was watching your live stream yesterday, and you had said that your husband is from Denmark, and I wanted to check your name to see how it's spelt. And yes, it is very Danish. My name is also very Danish. My dad is from Denmark. Well, his family is from Denmark. I haven't been yet. So Marco says it'll be interesting to see how the business changes once wholesale and food service industries make a return. Yeah, it will be interesting. And if you caught my chat yesterday, so yesterday I had an amazing conversation with two friends of mine. One is a tea vendor, one of our clients that sources tea and supplies in restaurants in Miami. And another one is actually based here in. Oh, good. Yeah. So Marco, you did see yesterday's conversation. Yeah, that was incredible. And it wasn't so optimistic. It was actually quite pessimistic. And rather than focus on being pessimistic, I want to focus on like how can we build more resilience there, because there's a lot of chit chat. Even food service is going to open back up here in Vegas. It's been going for 3 weeks now. Food service has been open at limited capacity, but every restaurant is kind of treating it differently. But there's also a lot of chit chat about how long is this going to last, how the restaurants are working on very small margins, smaller margins than before, and also those small margins are made up of lower wages. To be honest, it's something that I've heard across this market here, that a lot of these restaurants that have reopened have brought their staff back at lower pay. So it's a challenge. How long will that last? And tea is definitely like the last priority for these restaurants that have opened. A trend of the reopening of these restaurants is simplifying menus and simplifying ingredients lists so that the restaurant itself can be more resilient, because who knows if a shutdown is going to happen again or what the future is going to be. So if a restaurant is going to reopen, they're not going to get themselves up to where they were before pandemic. They're going to be very smart about what they stock, and in their fridges, especially perishable things, how much money they spend. And so they're simplifying their menus so that they don't have to stock as many ingredients, and kind of mitigating a lot of that risk. And unfortunately, tea, it's definitely not a priority in that. So that's something else to worry about. I have not seen an increase of our wholesale business, and I don't supply restaurants directly, so I'm not like directly connected to the pulse there. I supply distributors who would then supply to restaurants, so there's like kind of a delay. But my clients, they had to be proactive because they had to be ready for when the restaurants. And so, they are keeping the conversations open with their clients to find out what their needs are going to be once they reopen, and then proactively stocking their warehouses to make sure that they're ready. And I haven't really seen any urgency. I was kind of expecting clients to be calling me up and saying, hey, like we're opening in a few days and everybody needs stuff. I need to order this, and that. That hasn't happened yet for us. So, still staying optimistic that there are ways to bring in resilience in this. So, online tea sales is helping. Our launch of teaanditspeople.com has, helped. Our SEO hasn't kicked in just yet, so we're not completely active, but it's getting there, and I'm grateful for that supplement of revenue to support our business, as well as the events, the Taste the People's Tea, which yesterday I had made that the deadline to get your tickets for that, to receive your tea in time for our first event that's going to be next week, Tuesday. But I've decided if you want to get in today, you could definitely get your tickets still in, as long as you're in the U.S. If you're international, I can't guarantee you're going to get your tea in time. But if you're based here in the U.S., I definitely know I can get your tea in time. So if you put your order in today, if you go to teaanditspeople.com, it's just like the first thing when you go to that page. It's the first thing promoted there, which is a series of events called Taste the People's Tea, where we will feature different tea makers within our network and feature 3 different teas within their catalog. And I'll give a presentation on their stories, stories of their families, stories of their community and their terroir, and then of course we will drink those 3 teas. And this will be in a private Zoom room, so it won't be broadcasted live like this. It is going to be premium content, but what's really cool about it is it'll be interactive as well. So in addition to this storytelling element and just kind of an opportunity to drink tea together and taste some new teas, I can also walk you through some of your own questions you have, even just about brewing tea. If you have questions about your teaware, you want to show me something and ask, or your technique, I'll be able to engage with you on that level. And so, yeah, our first class is going to be next week on Tuesday. It should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that's just like one example of the diversification that I've had to implement here to keep things rolling, and we're thriving. We're doing great. You don't have to worry about us here, and things looking up on the horizon as I'm putting together our buying strategy for this year. A little delayed in our buying strategy, but I just wanted to make sure that everything had cooled off and we had reduced all of the risk involved with importing right now. We do have a pretty significant import that has been stuck in India for months now, and I am so grateful for the patience of our clients that are waiting for that, that are being understanding and flexible in this as we wait for the lockdown to open up, which now has been extended until the end of June. So there has now been, I think, 4 different extensions to the Indian lockdown. And that brings me up to another industry update I wanted to give today before I get into Kilgreen Tea Education, and that's to deal with India as well as Nepal. So I saw an article today, talking about some increased contention between Nepal and Darjeeling. That, so we all know since 2017, Second Flush, the strike, the work strike. I mean, it was just a general strike, but the workers were striking, and that definitely was a big blow to the Darjeeling tea industry and their harvest for that year. It had forced some very significant supply chains to be built between Nepal and India. And this is not like, for export. Majority of the tea that ended up being imported from Nepal to satisfy the Darjeeling demand was actually for domestic consumption in India. Um, so it was the Indian people, kind of scamming their own people, saying that this tea was Darjeeling. And this is mostly in the urban markets, so Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai. Those big markets is where this tea is going to hire in coffee shops, tea shops, cafes that want to have a Darjeeling on the menu. So the article that I read today was, some contention between the Darjeeling tea suppliers and producers who now are able to run at 100% capacity as far as labor. So there was a problem with the first flush in that the lockdown stopped them from starting the first flush. And then once the government allowed 25% of workforce to start working, it was already too late. And so that 25% workforce was pretty much just reserved for what's called skiffing. And so that's essentially pruning the tea bushes. They were already into bhanji, bhanji being like mature, which actually you can make oolong tea from. Usually oolong tea is made from the bhanji leaf, the more matured leaf. That's why you don't see a bunch of the buds in oolong tea. You usually see full leaves. But it was already too late for the first flush harvest, so they used that 25% work capacity to skiff the bushes so that they would get a second flush. Because if they didn't skiff it or they didn't remove, that matured first flush shoot, then the second flush would come out very different. So they did the skiffing, and so now second flush is available, and now they are working at 100% capacity and are producing tea, but kind of at an unfair advantage from Nepal, who technically had lockdown. Talking to my friends in Nepal, they told me they were on lockdown and they didn't know what to do. But then there's other stories. And Nepal is a much more remote place. It's a lot easier to get away with not following orders there because it's such a mountainous terrain. Even though you'll randomly be walking out in the tea fields and you'll see like a lineup of military people with guns in the middle of the tea mountain is confusing, but I think it is a little bit easier for people to go against orders there because it is more isolated. And so the complaint is that the tea factories in Nepal have actually been producing the entire time, and so they're able to provide a consistent flow of product into India. And so the Indian tea producers and the Indian Tea Board are, making a petition to close the border and close the trade between Nepal and India. And again, this is for domestic consumption of the tea. This is not for bringing into India, getting labeled as Darjeeling, and then sent out for export. This is just for domestic consumption. So yeah, just a little bit of drama between Darjeeling and Nepal, as usual, and just so interesting to see how something that may seem so insignificant could be so significant. So we'll see how that unfolds, and I, of course, will keep my eye on it and share information with you as it becomes available. So that's that. Now we can move on to tea education. I'm talking about Kilgreen today. I'm going to be drinking a green tea. This is a steamed green tea, and I chose this tea just because steaming green tea is not a super unique form of Kilgreen. It's how most Japanese green teas are processed. But this one's unique because this is a steamed green tea from India. And I'm going to show some videos and some photos that kind of exemplify what I mean here. So let's see. I'm going to show a video first. This is part of our Tea101 series, which is available for rental and for purchase on our Vimeo video on demand page. If you just visit tealit.com/Tea101, you'll also be able to sign up for updates and download the video from there. It's a 45-minute, 5-chapter video that covers history of tea, processing of tea with, like, and you'll see in the video now, or you'll hear, at least if you're on it. Well, maybe I'll turn the video on Instagram. You guys can watch it. And the spread of tea. So, where did it spread from China, as well as busting some common myths on tea, and brewing of tea. And again, that's a really awesome video. We actually made this video for service staff for our clients that service coffee shops and whatnot. So, if a coffee shop or a restaurant is introducing really good quality tea, it is really important that their staff has even just a minimal understanding of how tea is made and what are basic considerations to terroir. Not that they need to be an expert or, having their own gung fu tea practice, which we encourage, so when I'm engaged in training and empowering a staff to do tea, that's really important for me, is to empower them to develop their own practice. But the purpose of this video is just to give you a basic understanding. So I am going, oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. Is it storming there? Is that why your internet's going out? All right, I'm gonna start the video.
Kilgrain refers to the process of denaturing the browning enzyme in tea. These enzymes denature at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a very important process for green and oolong teas, which shows the tea master's craft of evenly denaturing the enzyme throughout the batch after batch. The two methods that are most commonly used in the Kilgrain step of processing are pan firing and steaming. Steam is most commonly used in Japan and is quickly becoming a favorite for small tea producers in India, as the technology is affordable and efficient. Pan firing is the most traditional process and is usually done in large woks with well-ventilated wood fires. Drum dryers are commonly used in the Kilgrain for oolong teas. Large heated drums that spin the tea leaves inside to evenly distribute the heat. Blanching is another way of performing the Kilgrain step, but is not commonly used. Each method of denaturing the browning enzyme imparts different flavor and quality characteristics. It is the art form of the tea master to choose the method that best fits their tea. Browning enzymes will denature as moisture content declines, which is why dehydration through processes such as sun drying is another method of stopping oxidation. This is the mechanism behind white tea. Rolling. Oolong and black tea are processed with some.
I'll save this little subject for another time. But so this tea that I'm having right now, that I'm going to drink right now, is from Heritage. So this is their factory, and this is the leaf that's going towards their green leaf. He's preparing the trays now, and I just wanted to show you their system. It was in that video, but it might have passed by quickly. So this is their steamer here, and it's a very simple technology, very foolproof way of doing the processing. And as long as you fill these trays, so these trays are going to go inside the steamer here, and the steam will rise through the apparatus and perform the job. But just like last week when I was talking about withering, that the consistency and the full exposure of air to each individual leaf is very important to consistent processing. So if he had stacked like another layer of leaf on top of all of this, it may have led to uneven processing. Here we go. See, you can see these are the shelves of where those trays will go inside. The steam is being generated underneath here and rising through the space. And we'll process the tea leaf just like this. And it doesn't need much time. Like I said, the temperature required to denature this enzyme is not very high. So, you don't have to heavily process it. And steam is kind of cool because it's kind of a passive thing. And the steaming machines for the Japanese green tea, like the sencha factories, are usually running on conveyor belts. So as long as you have a consistent flow of steam going and your conveyor belt is moving at the same rate, you'll have very easy, consistent processing, very passive processing. This is batch processing, so you do have to time things and make sure that you pull these trays out in time. And so that's his job, just to make sure that everything is evenly processed. So it's closed. I think this is after. Yeah, this is the leaf after it's been Kilgreen. So you see how kind of wilted it looks, and the color is different than it was before. It definitely had like a more crisp, vibrant green before, but so that's dulled down a little bit, but this is actually like locked in. Even though it's dulled a little bit, it has locked in some of that green color. And usually these spaces are very difficult to work within because the steam, steam's a funny thing because it's hot. Duh. But it's like energetically, it's more hot than even boiling water because the amount of energy required to convert non-boiling water to boiling water and convert it from a liquid state into a gas form, which is what steam is, that there's it's a big release of energy. So that's what I mean by being hotter than boiling water. Like temperature wise, it may be the same temperature or even lower in temperature, but energetically it's got a lot of power and energy in it because of that conversion. So yeah, getting steam to the face right here it can be good. Oh, here's a nice shot of the leaves after Kilgreen. And then after this step, they would go into rolling and then to the drying. But, like in the case of pan firing, I would take a lot of shots of this. Very nice. See, these ladies are getting ready to roll it. And then this is the dryer. This is the dryer they use. And that's the final product. What I'm going to drink is very similar to this. So this is pan firing. And again, this is unique because it is in India. And pan firing is typically a step, a quality tea processing step you see in China. But this guy, this is Prabhu from Teenair Tea in South India and Nilgiri. He's kind of just created, let's see if I got a shot of, here it is. So this kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. It's like a wok, and he just created this himself. He made this himself. Like this type of tea processing is not common in India. Even at like the tea estates in like Darjeeling that are trying to do very fine quality, high quality teas to get thousands of dollars a kilo for it, they aren't even using this small scale operation. This is very common to what you see in rural China, where they have that accessibility to small batches. So this is just a big wok, and then he's rigged it over. I think it's electric fire to fire up the wok. And this is the leaf here. He's using just his hands to constantly roll the leaf around because, again, you want even processing. You also don't want to like burn part of the leaf, so you don't want to like leave it on this is a very hot surface. You don't want to leave it there for too long, so you're constantly tossing it around. And additionally, when you're doing this pan firing like this with this manipulation, there's definitely additional value in this step for shaping the leaf, not just killing the green, but also shaping the leaf. I thought that was interesting. See there, he's throwing it around. And then this leaf over here is kind of sitting there. So then on his next go around with his hands, he's going to make sure he grabs all of this stuff up because it'll get burnt. Like these little ends right here, they'll get burnt if they stay just in one spot for too long. So that explains Kilgreen and how Kilgreen works. It's a very simple process. So what you're killing, the Kilgreen, is you're denaturing the enzyme. The enzyme is a protein. All enzymes are proteins. Enzymes, they are compounds that accelerate a process. Something that's enzymatic means it's been accelerated by some other factor, some other compound that's there. So there's several different enzymes that are involved in the oxidation of tea leaves, but the main one, and the one I always talk about, is one called polyphenol oxidase, which is a very common enzyme in the food science world, and so that's why I always talk about it, because that's one that we can all relate to. And that's the enzyme that exists in avocados and apples. When you cut those fruits, they start to brown, and you see it. It's very visible. It happens very quickly, but it only happens once you cut the flesh open and expose that flesh to oxygen. So that enzyme is not the one actually doing the work. What that enzyme doing is helping bind together the oxygen with the other compounds to create the oxidation, to create those tannins and convert those polyphenols. I'm gonna get brewing. This is another interesting thing about this tea, is that in addition to being steamed, processed, I showed you the photos of how it's processed, it's also smoked after complete process is finished. So after the tea has been processed and dried, then they smoke it with local wood, very aromatic local wood. I forget exactly what wood they use for smoking. So this tea is called Heritage Firewood Green. I'll go ahead and put the link up so you guys can take a look at it. And it's a very popular tea. And it'll actually be a part of Taste the People's Tea tasting series for Rajan Barua, who is the tea maker at Heritage, that will be featuring in that event. And it's popular in that, like, it is like a fresh, crisp green tea and very clean looking. I mean, you can see the liquor. We won't be able to see the liquor too much from inside my bowl, but you could have seen from the pour here that it's very clean. Yeah, I guess from the camera angle up there, you guys can see how clean looking the tea is. I should have used a glass pitcher so that way you could have definitely seen it. Hi, Gabby. Happy Tuesday. This bowl, I got it from a studio in Seattle. I forget the name of it. It's very small. Just came across it years ago when I think we were there for the Northwest Tea Festival, maybe in 2013, 2012. I forget when. But he is an enthusiast of Japanese tea culture, and he collects wabi-sabi ceramics. And there was a whole series of bowls like this. None of them were the same, of course, but different sizes. And this one felt the best. I love this bowl. I usually use it as a pitcher, but it has a beautiful, nice pouring spout to it. Nice feel in the hand. It's beautiful. So you definitely get like up front. I think it's the guy that runs it. I think his name is Tatsuo. Um, but maybe I'm wrong too. I don't want to. I don't want to like give the wrong name. But I think Tatsuo is the guy that owns it. I forget the name of it. It wasn't a big place, and he's not even online. So it's not even like you'd be able to find him online and try to order one online. It's one of those things that you just gotta go in person and feel all the wares that he has. Um, and actually, if I remember correctly, a lot of the stuff that he had was not for tea. It was just other ceramics that he had collected. And I think the artist that made this is not even Japanese. He has features of all the different artists of the different wares that he has. The cup and this go together. They're from very different places. So this is from, what am I forgetting? Dai, Dai style of pottery in Jishanvana and Jinghong. Um, Last time we went to a big studio, very big studio. They're pumping out lots of stuff. But the style of I'm not into that style. It's like really rustic, really rustic. I mean, and this is pretty rustic. Like these two things are as rustic as I like to get. I do, you know, but a lot of the stuff is unglazed. Um, and I don't know, I just really wasn't drawn to it. But this cup I was really drawn to because it does have a nice glaze on it, and it's like a sand glaze, so it has a really nice texture to it as well as being smooth. Like the rest of the stuff didn't have that smooth texture, and I think maybe that's what kind of didn't draw me to it. But what's really special is like this intoxicating. Oh, look at that, the sun. I get some sun in there. This like beautiful, intoxicating blue color that you can just get lost inside the cup. Really love that. I just like saw this cup and I'm like, oh, okay, this is the only thing I'm buying. There was a lot of beautiful things to buy there though. A lot of nice statues, but that's the thing about when you're in China and you see stuff like that, it's like how are you gonna get it home? So yeah, as I was saying, the tea has up front a very crisp, fresh cut grass, and so that's something that you can always kind of expect from a green tea, and that's because of the kill green step. And the sooner you do that kill green step, and the more efficiently you do that, and evenly you do that step, you will lock in that fresh cut leaf taste. And you know, we think of grass because that's a memory that we all have, right? You know, when someone mows the lawn and you walk across, you smell it. It's just really incredible, earthy, fresh smell. But then after that, you get the smoke, and the smoke is really subtle. And this is not smoke that you probably, if you're in North America, probably experienced with like a lapsang souchong, which is what people usually draw to when they talk about smoked teas. And really, to be honest, lapsang souchong, like the real authentic one, is not smoky. That smokiness that we think of with like James Bond, you know, he was famous for liking lapsang souchong. That is a very like Western interpretation of that tea, and again, especially North American palate is really attracted to like the sexy, like just come on real strong up front. And so that the best way that you connect with that is an aroma. And the best way that you optimize aromatic experiences is through perfume, or you know, whatever version of perfume you want to call it, be it essential oils, and be it what's the new trendy word they use for that, terpenes in the cannabis industry. That's the word they like to say for it. But these are pretty much just like concentrated, volatiles that trigger that olfactory response and sensation. So how you get that with smoke is literally like liquid smoke flavoring that you can add to your food and your cooking to give it that strong aroma. So a lot of the lapsang souchangs, especially from like the blended tea companies, the blended tea vendors, those are actually flavored. And if I was tasting that tea right now, that would definitely be the first note that I would connect with, is like that intense smokiness. On this tea, the first note I connected with was that earthy, fresh cut grass. And then the smoke came after. And the smoke that's coming is like a subtle smoke that's just kind of more textural than it is aromatic. And that's because this is real smoke. It's not a perfume. It's not a concentrated um, volatile solution that is hitting me first. I mean, of course, you can heavily smoke a tea, and that has actually happened, and it wasn't unintentional. So, the same tea factory and tea maker Rajan Barua, he works with small tea growers in Arunachal Pradesh, which is hill country just north of Assam, on the other side of the Brahmaputra, and they have a small scale artisanal factory. And the first year that we got tea from them, the tea was really exciting and really good. And then the next year, we got a green tea from them, the Arunachal Longleaf. Some of you may have remembered, some of our wholesale clients may remember that tea. And we got it in 2017, I believe was the year, or 18, I forget. One of those years. The lot that came to us was just like overly smoky. It was so smoky, it was astringent. And the astringency that you sensed from the tea did not feel like it was astringency coming from the green tea. So, green teas, especially when you overbrew them, heavily brew them, it can bring out an astringency in the tea if it's not, of the most elite quality. The astringency that we were sensing from this tea didn't feel like it was even coming from the greenness in the tea. It felt like it was coming from the smoke. And it wasn't meant to be a smoked tea. And so, I hit them up and I said, hey, what happened to this tea? And they said, oh, we're very sorry. Um, the whole area had very heavy rains this year, which caused all of their burning wood that they use for powering their steaming machines and powering their drying machines. So a lot of these like really rustic small scale factories are using wood as a heat source to heat these big machines. And the wood, if you've ever made a campfire with wet wood, you know what happens, right? You make steam. And so they had no choice but to use waterlogged wood to burn for their equipment, and that ended up steaming out the entire facility, the entire factory. They didn't have proper ventilation to handle that, and so all of their teas came out super steamy. Again, so steamy it was astringent. It was like unpleasant to drink. So on this steep, I'm on the second steep down. There was a little bit of the first steep that I kind of stacked on it, which is fine. I'm not critical about trying to keep steeping separate. I'm a very casual tea drinker, and I like to encourage other people to have a casual attitude, or whatever boundary of casual you want to establish with your practice of tea, to not be too stringent to follow a certain protocol, unless you want to. Those are your own boundaries and your own consent to set. But I steeped the second steep much longer than the first one. And I like to do that generally with my teas, especially with green tea. I like to do a very short, easy steep on the first steep, and then let it steep longer as the steepings go on. So the flavor expression is a lot different on this cup, a lot more intense, a little bit more astringent than the first one. The first cup was just super smooth, very easy to drink. This one has a little bit of that bite, but not much. I mean, this is probably typical to what most people think of and enjoy in green tea. We have found in this tea, I don't know if it's like a factor of the smoking or just a factor of how quality the processing is, but in this particular tea, we found that it's a lot more resilient to more intense steeping than other teas, other green teas. They always say to, people say, oh, I don't like green tea. And oftentimes it's just because they've never had a properly brewed cup of green tea. But this one is more resilient. So this is actually a good green tea option for the restaurant setting and the cafe setting. Because in those settings, the staff are busy, or there's high turnover, so they're not very well trained, or maybe they're just not impassioned about serving green tea or tea in general to their customers. So you often will see oversteeping happening, and so tea vendors have to curate what teas are made available to them based off of knowing them that there's a high potential of them being oversteeped. And so that's why this tea, as well as, so like with the Yankee teas, which are also steamed, that's the Darjeeling small tea maker that we work with. They have a green tea. Well, they have two different green teas that we currently have in our stock. One of them is called Moktuchia, which will be in Yonku's Taste the People's Tea tasting event, as well as Panachia. And they're both steamed. They have different plucking standard and different processing standard. And the Moktuchia is extremely temperamental. It's a lot sweeter and a lot more nuanced and complex. And so that's where you can tell its premium quality over the other green tea. But the Panachia is a lot more resilient to stronger brewing. The Moktuchia, if you brew it too strong, it can come out bitter and astringent. There's another green tea from Nepal that also has that feature called Moonshine. Moonshine it's mostly a green tea, but it has the aesthetic of a white tea, and technically could be called a oolong tea because it's rolled and there's some limited oxidation. But there's a very fast kill green step. I don't know. It's an interesting tea. But that one is extremely temperamental. But when you do dial in your brewing just right, that tea is like crazy good because it tastes like cotton candy, in my opinion. So this tea that I'm drinking right now is from Assam, India. So Heritage Assam from Rajendra Barua. He's in Dibrugarh. But earlier I was talking about a green tea from the Nilgiris that was from Tinir Prabhu. I was showing his, small operation. Oh yeah, Michael knows the moonshine. So yeah, Michael, have you had experience with that moonshine over brewing? Steeping it too intensely? Sometimes that tea scares people, so I tend to not put it onto food service menus because I know it freaks people out. Like once they taste it overbrewed, they're like, "Oh no, this tea we can't have it." A couple of restaurants like Evergreen, Jenny Wong, she serves the moonshine in her restaurant. She does a great job on it. But my best experience with moonshine was actually cold brewing it in soda water. In I guess seltzer and soda water, I think the same thing. Just like non-sweetened, non-flavored, bubbly water, and let it cold brew in that. And oh man, it tastes so good. It tastes like a soda. It also tastes good cold brewed and nitro tapped. That is definitely a luxury that I don't get to experience too often. Yeah, just try. I know it's heartbreaking to waste some tea, but it's not wasting if it's education, just a small amount. But yeah, that's smart to do the short steeps because that tea, like I said, if dialed in right, is so good. But if you oversteep it, oh yeah, try the cold brew. And maybe once you try the cold brew, you won't go back. And you can do a hot brew and then a cold brew. But the thing with doing the hot brew and then cold brew is that if you do the hot brew, you are going to be extracting a lot more of those astringent and bitter compounds. If you do the cold brew, like none of them will come out. It'll be like completely mild, completely soft, completely sweet. You won't have any tinge of bitterness to it, which for green tea, you kind of want that, right? If you want to fit that profile of what people think of a green tea, you want to have a little bit of that astringent bite, that fresh cut green grass bite. How long to cold brew the soda? Uh, I always like to do cold brews for at least 9 hours. But the thing that's great about cold brew is that there's no rules. Like, I have set up a cold brew, and 2 hours later, someone said, "Oh, I want a cup," and I, decanted some of them for them, and it tasted okay. It was maybe a little light, which is why I just like to say 9 hours, and plus that's easy if like at nighttime you set it up and go to sleep, and then by the next day it's ready, and that's usually 9 hours is a good time for that overnight process. But if you go over 9 hours, it's fine too. And if you re-steep it, that's also fine. So my cold brew pitcher at home that I keep in the fridge, and I'll just cold brew in the fridge directly. I don't do like the sun tea, or like keeping it out on the counter to do the brewing. I'll leave it in the fridge, and I have like a cool pitcher that has like a filter on it so the leaf doesn't come through, so I don't even have to decant it. And I can just steep it in the fridge, and then once I drink all of it, I can add more water and put it back in the fridge. So you can re-steep the leaf, especially if it's good quality. You can do either. You can steep it either at room temperature or the refrigerator. I personally like the refrigerator. I don't think it has too much of a difference of how the tea brews, but it does add just like an extra layer of luxury that the tea is already chilled when you decant it, so you don't have to add ice. And that is one issue with either iced tea or cold brew tea. When you add ice and that ice melts, it dilutes your tea. And cold brew is not typically a concentrate. So, people making iced tea that want to take that into consideration will hot steep a concentrated tea. So then when they add the ice and the ice melts, it balances out the brew. But if you're cold brewing, you can't make a concentrate. You could try using more leaf, but it doesn't really make it more concentrated. I typically, for my cold brewing, I do 15 grams of leaf to a gallon of water. I've got a bunch of these glass gallon jars, so that's what I use for my cold brewing. And that just makes it easier, 15 grams to a gallon. Pretty easy. And once you do the math, that's kind of the same ratio if you're doing gung fu. If you're going to steep 15 grams of leaf and get the most steeps out of it, you're going to need a gallon of water. It's a pretty good ratio there. I appreciate you asking questions and engaging with this. Deepak, where are you located, Deepak? Are you in India? I am also feeling quite alert from this tea. Um, oh yeah, so Deepak asked if we've added fresh fruit to the tea. Yes, definitely. That is a very good idea. Even to like when you're steeping the tea in the soda water, it's really nice to throw some fruit in there too. And I feel like the soda water, because of the agitation of the fizziness, of the bubbles in the water, that it helps extract more. I actually, World Tea Expo 2014, I saw a really cool thing that really inspired me, and I haven't seen it since, and I'd love to see it more or play with it more, was cold brewing with ultrasonic technology. So, like sonic pulses, sonic waves. Um, Dental offices will have these like pools. They're like small pool that creates a sonic wave inside the water, and that solution with the sonic wave is actually sterilizing, I believe. And that's, why there's use for it in the dental office to sterilize tools or things. But they were using one of these stainless steel, like ultrasonic baths to steep different leaves, dried leaves. It wasn't tea, but just like dried leaves of different plants. This was like a newer tea company that was just trying to introduce some new products to the market. And I think the sonic brewing was not a part of their product. It wasn't a part of their company or pitch. It was just how they chose to sample their teas at World Tea Expo that year. But I was really impressed with it because, the products that they were featuring were not complex or artisanal in themselves, but the tea that they were brewing and sharing with people was actually very soft and actually had like a very surprising texture, like fullness and texture to it. And I think that a lot of it was due to how they were brewing it. So yeah, it's kind of like cold brew, but the sonic waves accelerate the process. So maybe you can brew your tea in 30 minutes versus 9 hours, something like that. So that's an idea I always like throw out there if someone wants to get creative, or if you have access to sonic. I wonder if you could do that. Like they say the sonic toothbrushes, that they create a sonic wave like on your teeth, and that's like part of its value and antibacterial power. I wonder if you could do that, just in your steeping vessel, just put the toothbrush buzzing in the water to get it to create the sonic wave so that it'll steep that way. Yes, Deepak is very interesting. Tea is interesting. It is. It's so funny when I started this journey of sharing tea and trying to popularize the culture of tea here in the U.S. This was like 9 years ago. I never would have thought that I find so many cool things to share about tea. But yeah, definitely finding more and more things every day. My hour is almost up, and I feel like I have effectively introduced the Kilgreen step to you all and gave some interesting insights related to green tea and steeping of green teas. So I feel satisfied on that. There's no more questions. But tomorrow we will, thank you, Michelle. Tomorrow we will be discussing the Constitution. So not too much tea education. I'll of course be drinking some tea and hopefully getting enlightenment from the tea. But yeah, tomorrow will be the third edition of my Constitution study group. So same time, same way. We'll be here tomorrow. Bring your questions and your interest in the Constitution. We're going to be going over Articles 2 and 3, which highlights the executive and the judiciary. And then, I'm hoping to bang out some more of the amendments, but I'm going to kind of keep it open-ended because of what we're dealing with right now in the protests and the response to the protest. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to dig deep into what's written to the Constitution about how we can apply it to the questions and feelings that we may have around the right and reaction to peaceful protest or even non-peaceful protest. So yeah, look forward to that. Bring your questions. I look forward to it. Goodbye, Instagram. See you tomorrow. And everybody else, much love, much aloha, pure aloha, and I'll